It was just another quiet morning at Miller's Diner, the kind of place where the smell of coffee clings to your clothes, and the bell above the door sings the same tired note every time it opens. The early sun filtered through the blinds, painting golden stripes across the tables. The regulars were already in, a few truck drivers, some retirees, and a nurse who always sat by the window before her shift. But at table 6, near the far corner, sat the man who had become part of the diner's soul, an elderly gentleman with a brown fedora, trembling hands, and the saddest eyes Emily had ever seen. Every morning, without fail, he ordered the same thing, black coffee and 2 slices of toast. Every morning, she made sure to butter his toast just right because his hands shook too much to do it himself. Before we go deeper into this heart-touching story, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of helping others, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Tales. It helps us keep sharing real, emotional stories that remind the world that compassion still exists. Emily had only been working at Miller's for 6 months, but the old man had already become part of her morning routine, almost like family. He always sat quietly, rarely talking except to say, "Thank you, dear." At first, she thought he was just another lonely soul passing through. But as the days went by, she noticed the details, the careful way he folded his napkin, the way he looked out the window for long minutes as if watching memories walk by, the tiny photo he kept tucked in his wallet that he sometimes pulled out and stared at until his eyes filled with tears. It was a photo of a young woman, smiling brightly beside a dog in a small house in the background. Emily never asked, but she could feel the story there, the loss, the love, the years that slipped away. One particularly cold morning, she noticed he hadn't come in. His usual table sat empty, coffee cup missing, napkin holder untouched. Something inside her felt off, that quiet intuition that only kind hearts notice. He didn't come the next day either. Or the day after. By the 4th morning, she couldn't shake the worry. She even checked the hospital records board at the local clinic when she dropped off a coffee for a nurse friend. But there was no trace of him. The world seemed to have swallowed him whole. Then, just as she began to accept that maybe he'd gone in that final, quiet way that lonely people do, he returned. The bell jingled, and there he was again, slower, friendlier, but smiling. He apologized softly, telling her he'd been unwell but missed her coffee too much to stay away. She smiled and said nothing about the tears welling in her eyes as she buttered his toast. That morning, she told herself she'd start checking on him, maybe bring him soup after her shift, maybe ask if he needed help with groceries. But life has a way of keeping kind intentions buried under exhaustion and routine. Weeks went by. Their mornings continued, simple but beautiful, her serving, him thanking, a quiet rhythm of unspoken kindness. Sometimes she noticed his coat seemed thinner in the cold, or that he coughed a little longer. She once slipped an extra muffin into his bag when she realized he didn't seem to eat much. He smiled wider that day than she had ever seen him smile before. And then, one morning, everything changed. Emily came in for her usual early shift, wiping down tables when the door opened. But it wasn't the old man who walked in. Instead, 4 men in dark suits entered, their shoes echoing sharply against the floor. They looked completely out of place in the cozy diner. Behind them came 2 lawyers, carrying briefcases and wearing serious expressions. The entire diner fell silent. Emily froze behind the counter, heart pounding. The taller lawyer looked around, then spotted her. "Are you Emily?" he asked. She nodded slowly. The lawyer smiled faintly, a look somewhere between professional and sympathetic. "We represent Mr. Harold Bennett," he said. Emily's breath caught. That was the old man's name, Harold. She had never even known his full name. The lawyer continued, "Mr. Bennett passed away 3 days ago." The words hit like a wave, pulling the air from her lungs. She gripped the counter for balance. She didn't speak, she couldn't. The diner blurred as tears burned her eyes. The lawyer placed an envelope on the counter. "He left a letter for you," he said softly. "And instructions." Emily's trembling hands opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten note in shaky script. "Dear Emily," it began, "you've been my only friend in years. You didn't know my story, but you gave me something priceless, kindness without reason. You reminded me that people still care. I lost my wife 20 years ago, and my daughter before that. Every morning at your diner was a piece of light in my fading life. I wish I could repay your kindness. Maybe this will help." She looked up as the lawyer handed her a second envelope, heavier this time, stamped with seals and documents. "Mr. Bennett left you something," he explained gently. "He owned a small property on the edge of town, an old house and a bit of land. It's yours now. He wanted you to have it." Emily stood speechless as the men explained the details, the property transfer, the keys, the arrangements. The bodyguards stood respectfully silent, watching the moment unfold. The lawyer finished by saying, "He said you'd understand. He said you made his last days happy." Then they turned and left as quietly as they'd come. Emily walked into the back room, letter still clutched in her hand. She cried, not from the gift, but from the realization that her simple act of kindness, her small daily gestures, had meant the world to someone. She thought about all those mornings, the toast, the coffee, the gentle, "Thank you, dear." And she realized those words had been more than gratitude, they were love, appreciation, and farewell wrapped into one. Weeks later, Emily visited the house. It was old but beautiful, white paint peeling, roses still growing in the front yard. Inside, she found the same photo of his wife and daughter framed on the mantel. Next to it was another picture, newly added, a candid snapshot of her at the diner, laughing as she poured coffee. She didn't even know he had taken it. A small note beneath it read, "For the girl who reminded me of life." Standing there in that quiet home, Emily felt the tears flow freely again. But this time, they weren't just for loss, they were for gratitude, for the strange, beautiful circle of kindness that had brought two lonely souls together for a little while. She decided to keep the diner job, but on weekends, she'd visit the house, tending the roses, keeping the place alive just as he had kept her hope alive. And from that day on, every time a new customer walked into Miller's looking tired or lost, Emily smiled a little brighter, spoke a little softer, and served their coffee with the same warmth she once gave to Mr. Bennett. Because now she understood, sometimes, the smallest kindness can leave a legacy far bigger than any words or wealth ever could. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to Kindness Tales. Leave a comment below telling us how you've experienced kindness, or how you've shared it with someone who needed it. Speech balloon special request: before you go, please comment, "Kindness lives on," if you believe that one good deed can change a life forever.